everybody, it's Heidi and Jay here. Gonna give you some tips for road trips. One thing that you always want to make sure before you go on a long road trip is that you pee, do whatever you gotta do, because once you get on the road, you don't want to make a whole bunch of stops just so you can relieve yourself.
So one thing that really comes in handy when you're going very far is having snacks nearby. You can just grab them and eat them, and you don't really have to make stops as well. So that also cuts out on the amount of times that you have to make a stop because of conditions like being hungry or having to use the restroom.
So our third tip is mapping out the trip. So you want to know where you're going so you don't have to drive all different kinds of ways and let Google Maps or Apple Maps redirect you. So yeah, always make sure you know where you're going before you try to get there.
Another tip would be to set aside money for expenses, especially gas. This is very important because you don't know what could happen if you're going very far, and you don't want to be in a situation where you become stuck. You definitely want to be able to have expenses for if your tire blows out, if you need to call a tow truck, and everyone doesn't necessarily have AAA, so you might have to pay a large fee. So you definitely want to make sure that you have enough money for that. You also want to make sure that you have enough money because the further you go, the more gas you burn. And the more gas that you burn, the more that you have to actually fill up. So you want to make sure that you have enough money to fill up those multiple times.
Okay. So our next tip is make sure that you prepare for weather activities. So, our last road trip, we went out to the snow, and we had to make sure that we had hats, gloves, the proper jackets, boots, because if we would have got out there and that cold, both of us being from California, yeah, we would have froze our butts off. So yeah, always make sure that you have everything that you need before you leave. If it's raining, make sure you have an umbrella. Always make sure you have a hat.
I wasn't really prepared when we went to the snow for touching the snow with your hands. So another tip is to make sure that you know what proper attire to have as far as the right type of material. You want to make sure that you're prepared, because I had gloves, but they weren't snow gloves. So that's important. Also, if I could add, it's also important if you have tools that you would want to do certain activities. So for example, we were building a snowman, and it probably would have been nice to have
a shovel?
A shovel,
yeah.
Or even if you go to the beach, if you want to build a sandcastle, have a bucket, a shovel. So just being mindful of the activities you want to do when you go, and being mindful of what you might need to do those activities.
Yeah, and building off of that, if you're going to go up to the snow, make sure you bring a sled or something like that so you can actually enjoy yourself while you're out there.
Right. So then also make sure that you focus on the road. I put emphasis on this because when you're driving certain places where it's really, really narrow roads and really, really winding roads, the thing that will help you get through it safely is making sure that you keep your eyes where you're driving, rather than looking at the cars that are close to you or looking at the edge that's really close to you. Because if you're focusing on the road, 9 times out of 10, wherever you're looking is where you'll go. That's why sometimes if you look away for 1 second, you veer off a little bit. So that's why it's important to focus. For example, when we were going to the snow, the roads were very, very thin, and also in some parts of the road there wasn't necessarily side rails. So it really made me have to focus to not scare myself into driving us off the road.
Yeah.
But in seriousness, you have to focus in order to safely get through it. So just keep that in mind. If you just focus on the road, it's not as scary.
Okay, and our last tip is bring a buddy and have them capture the scenery. So if you're driving, make sure that you have the passenger over there with their phone, taking pictures of the mountain ranges or the plains, wherever you guys are going. and they're gonna be the one that's gonna choose the best music for you, so you don't have to listen to 8 hours of the same song over and over on the radio.
Unless you have a playlist.
Yeah, if you have a playlist, then play it. But the best thing is always to have a buddy there with you that's watching your back at all times.
Yeah, you're gonna probably beat yourself up if you don't get those actual footage of you in the moment driving to the place that you're driving, because sometimes that's the best thing, is the scenery. But we also know that you might not always be able to do a road trip with someone, so sometimes it might be handy to have like one of those car dash cam in your car, and you can be able to capture all the scenery too.
Well, thanks for watching our video. These were our road trip tips.
And I hope that you guys use some of this to your advantage, and I hope that you guys have safe road trips, and thank you for watching.
Like and subscribe.